Morning. I just opened up the barn this morning and thought maybe that the barn elves would have changed the oil in the combine, and well, they didn't. They were lazy. But I did notice something. When I walked in, I saw there was a puddle under the combine. So I'm guessing, because yesterday it was leaking out of this hose. Water was, which that's the air conditioning. Not uncommon for our condensation to build up in air conditioning and leak out. Every vehicle does. But the water itself is dried up, so now I touched it and that's oil. So I got looking. This lift cylinder is leaking oil. So I guess I'm going to have to check into that and see why it's leaking oil, one, and how bad it is, if it's worth rebuilding right now or just go with it for a while. So the first thing I'm going to do this morning is, one, I'm going to go through my filters and make sure I have all the filters I need to do what I want to do to this thing. Two, I'm going to change the oil in it. I'm going to drain the oil out of this first thing, and while the oil's draining out, I'm going to start going over it with a grease gun and then get new oil in it and kind of go from there. But I'm just going to start servicing, let's put it that way. It's going to get all new oil, filters, greased, and then as I'm greasing it, I go through and check bearings and chains and belts and blah blah blah. And you kind of get where I'm going with that, because it's a lengthy process, because this is a very large machine with a lot of working parts that all have to have eyeballs put on them. Well, I've got the majority of the filters. I'm missing a couple cab filters, which not a big deal. I can get that ordered and get it coming as soon as I can, but I can still change the oil and everything right now, so I'm gonna get everything up there and start. First thing I do is start dumping the oil, which right here that's a little petcock valve. You turn and then the oil drains out of the oil pan down a long tube. Hang on, let me get down there. It goes down a long tube right in here, and it goes right into the buckets. So yeah, I gotta wait. This is a good design, but a bad design at the same time, because after you drain all the oil out of it, you have to keep a bucket under that hose for like a good day, because there's still oil dripping out of that hose because it's such a long hose. And if you don't, you'll come in the morning with a little puddle of oil underneath your combine, and you got to clean that crap up. Some of my newer viewers that are not necessarily farmers probably do not realize the amount of dust that these machines produce when they're in the field harvesting. And I like to do this as just an example to prove to you how much dust is in there. So I have the old air filter and the new air filter. Hang on. Let me pull the new air filter out of the box. All right. This is the new engine air filter. And this is the old one. We're going to pull the old one out. Look at all that. And you can see a difference between the two here. Now, this is what I like to do to show you guys how much dust is in this thing. Now, we're gonna walk outside here. I'm gonna throw this up and let it hit the ground, and I'll show you how much dust comes out of it. It's pretty bad. Usually what I do is, just for fun, the combine's usually pulled ahead, and I'll throw the air filter off of up there, and then it hits the concrete floor and it makes a huge dust ball, like an explosion. But I'm not doing that for two reasons. One, I always have to clean up the mess afterwards, and two, I don't have the combine pulled ahead that far. Look at that, I ripped my glove. Doggone it. Now I gotta get a new one. Garbage. The things YouTubers do to entertain you guys gets to be ridiculous sometimes. Had to get my paint marker. What I normally do is I take a paint marker and I write on the filter the engine hours, separator hours, and the date. That way, that tells me what day I changed the oil and what hours are on there. But I write that down in the book also, but this is easier. Like if I'm out in the field, I can just pop that cover off real quick, see the date, engine hours, how many hours it's got on it since the last oil change, and then I can tell quickly in the field if I need to bring this back to do any kind of service. I just did the math on this. Last year I put 103.7 hours on this machine during harvest, so that's not terrible at all. Usually we like to change the oil about every 100 hours, so going 3.7 hours over is not the end of the world. And that 0.7, that could have been just moving around the barnyard and stuff like that. So that's not too bad at all. But I have a feeling this year we're going to be putting more hours on this machine because of the fact that we're doing corn, and corn takes a lot more time to do, a little longer, and it kind of looks like the beans are more healthier this year than last year, so we're going to have should be a healthy bean crop as well. I should say hefty, not healthy. So I figured I'd check the hydraulic oil because, well, that lift cylinder's leaking a little bit, and it needed some, naturally. I figured I'd pour some in, and as I was pouring some in, the funnel shifted a little bit. Then, well, you can kind of put two and two together on that one, right? This particular air filter here, I don't know exactly what it does. I know it sucks air. The main air filter up there, there's a Y pipe on it, and it sucks fresh air from there through this filter, through this tube, through this, looks like turbocharger thing, which goes into back here to the exhaust system for the DEF. So it has something to do with the DEF system. But just to kind of wrap your head around about how much dust and dirt is behind these machines, I pulled the old filter out and I put the new filter side by side so you can compare the two. In case you're unsure, the one on the left here is the dirty one. And for everybody that does the, oh, must be nice to have a combine with a cab on it and air conditioning. Yeah, it is. Because if not, I'd be breathing all that shit. And trust me, when I first started farming, I was breathing that because I had a cabless combine with a 12-foot head. So yeah, been there, done that. It kind of looks like the only air filter I don't have is the fresh air cab filter. Up there in the top of the cab where there's a silver button there. I don't know if you guys can see it. That drops down and then there's an air filter there. And what that air filter does is it cleans the air before it goes into the cab for the cab. And then there's another filter that it's a recirculating filter, that the air that's recirculating in the cab filters out. That's behind the seat. I have the recirculating filter, I just don't have that filter for the cab. And I don't know how I missed it, because that's kind of a biggie. I changed that one a couple times throughout the harvest season, because that one gets really bad, and I don't have any of those left, so I'm gonna have to go order those. I normally get 2 of them. That way I can change it in the beginning of the season, and then halfway through the season I change it again. Another thing I want to do before I go order that filter is, behind these doors is the separator, and I want to pull these doors off and then check the separator to make sure, because there's like tines and teeth on the separator, and I want to make sure they're all there. You know, because nobody ever runs a rock through their combine or nothing, and I just want to make sure none of those have been broken off or anything throughout harvest last year. Alright, so I'm going to show you basically the inside of the combine. What happens is, this is what they call a single tine separator. There's like a big torpedo like mechanism in here that turns. So as material comes in the throat of the combine, it goes up into like these chopper knives that turn and throw it into the back, and this thing spins. As it's spinning, there's beaters in here. It's kind of hard to see. Let me get my flashlight. See that knife thing right there, or that big beater? What that does is that turns, dragging material to the back of the machine. And as it is dragging material to the back of the machine, let's say you're harvesting soybeans or corn, it is knocking the seed or grain, however you want to call it, off of either the cob or out of the pod. The grain falls through these slats right here into these augers, which auger it back to this shaker table system, and any debris like stalks and stems that come through here with the grain get caught on these shaker tables. As you can see, there's still some stems here from last year, and what it does is these walk, and they walk all the stems, leaves, stalks, everything to the back of the machine, which then throws it out the back of the machine. But the grain that you're trying to save goes through these augers, comes all the way back onto this table, shaker table here, which shakes up and down. The grain falls through those slats, which goes back into what they call a cross auger. Cross auger is right down in here. There's an auger, and there's another one right there, which takes the material or the grain to the other side of the machine to what they call the clean grain elevator, which brings it up the machine and then dumps it into the tank. And then all the material that's in here gets thrown back in the chopper out the back of the machine right through the tailings chopper, and then it gets thrown right out of these and spread over the field and used as fertilizer for next year. It's actually like organic material for next year. Make sense? There's a lot to this machine. So when I say there's a lot of working components here, there really is a lot of working components to get the grain out of the pods or off the cobs or whatever and put in the clean grain tank, and then all the rest of the tailings go out the back. So what I have done here is, inside of here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a bar right there, right in there. I'll spin it. The bar, those teeth that are in there, that's what I need to check to see. There's one right there. So on that tube are them teeth. That's a good look right there. If you happen to get a small rock in there that bounces around in there, it'll break those teeth off of there. That's why I always have to check it every year to make sure all those teeth are on there so it works properly. If it's not on there, then I have to replace the teeth. But because that separator is balanced, you have to replace 3 of them for every broken one. So if one's broke, you got to replace the other 2 in that sequence so the machine stays balanced. And the only way I can actually show you what those teeth look like properly is like pull the concave cylinders down or off of there, and those concaves are extremely heavy and I don't want to deal with that just for content. So unless I got to replace a couple of those, I don't take the remove the concaves at all. But we'll see. I'm going to check it and see if any need to be replaced. If I do have to replace them, then you'll see the concaves be removed. It's a pain in the butt. Look, I actually have an old tooth. This is what they look like. So this is bolted right up there against that cylinder. Oop, I guess it helps if you see, right? It's bolted right there against the cylinder that turns. And if you hit a rock or get a rock bouncing around in there, what'll happen is it'll break right here. Just break that right off. And that's what you don't want to happen. But at any rate, I don't even know why I still have this old one here, because it's worn out. Whatever. You remember the cab filters I had to order? Didn't have to order at all. The John Deere dealer had them in stock. I'm like, sweet. So I can put one on the shelf and get that one changed. Whew, that's nasty. Ugh. All right. That cab filter's done. Now I gotta do the one on the inside, but I'll do that one when I vacuum it out and, you know, armor all that, things like that. Well, I have been combing over this thing quite a bit. For the most part, it's in good shape. Other than, you know, the belt and the bearing for the rotary screen, and a couple small items that's not a big issue, but need to be addressed regardless. Other than that, I mean, it's almost ready to go. I do need to grease it yet. I have not done that, and I've been going over the belts and the chains and just making sure everything looks good and bearings look good and tight. for the most part, it looks like it's in really good shape. So we are good that way. I do have to pull the heads out next and go through those, and then the semis, you know, so on and so forth. But regardless, I have the honor of picking up my grandson today from daycare, so I'm going to cut out a little early and go pick Scooter up, and then we're gonna go home and do something, I guess. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.